¿Qué pasó? Sup, chess guys? How's it hanging? Oh, hot. Okay, I played a game against Stockfish this morning, and then I was going over the game, and it had a pretty interesting end game. It was hitting on some themes I thought were teachable. I mean, I learned something from it. It was a theme I was already familiar with, but it doesn't hurt to rehash, and I definitely didn't um, realize the full potential of the theme in the game. So I will improve, you will improve. All right, let's go to the position I am speaking of. This position. Okay. So in the game, I had an inkling of the idea. I was putting things together the way I should. I just didn't quite carry it all the way to its thematic conclusion, I suppose. And once you understand the theme, the moves become easy. But if you don't, then the moves are they're just out in left field. um, so first, I'll say that I said I played against Stockfish. It was level 6 Stockfish on Lichess. So I do play against the full strength Stockfish. I think it's beneficial to play really strong opponents, but I find playing level 6, especially sometimes level 7, but it's a lot harder with level 7. But level 6, I can win against level 6 when I really play, my A game, when I'm really trying. I can win almost all of my games against level 6 when I'm really trying. Level 7, I usually draw. I'm playing my best ability, but I usually draw. Usually lose. Draw and lose. I think I've won once against level 7. I haven't played as many of those I have against level 6. But anyway, another point I wanted to make about that was playing against Stockfish seems a little silly when you can play against real opponents and take the satisfaction of beating real opponents, and that's true. But what I found is real opponents don't always play that great when they're in a losing or just a hard position to play. Like, say you're playing somebody and they're like slightly worse, or you have a clear advantage, but the road to winning isn't completely obvious. The other side still has plenty of ideas to defend. When you play against a human, a lot of times the other side will just make mistakes because they're in a tougher position. Whereas the computer, especially with level 6 on Lichess, it'll play a mistake near the opening, drop material, or allow me to get a sizable positional advantage. But then the rest of the game, it plays amazing defense. So basically, it forces me to get into a better position, and from that better position, try and win, which we all want to be in games, and that is usually the goal. But against really good defense, actually winning from a good position, or just winning when you're a pawn up, it's actually challenging. You really have to push it against good defense. That's why I like playing Stockfish. Anyway, enough of that. So in this position, there are probably 3 moves to really consider. I mean, you can consider a lot of moves. The first move that's pretty obvious, but isn't the best move, is going to be this rook back to c1, just to try and hold the pawns back. The reason it's not the best move is it's just not active enough, and it doesn't push the trumps that white has in the position. It's just holding. So we want to play a little bit more active than that. So rook c1 I don't know about that. Um, it's probably not terrible, but it's not fantastic either. Like white is probably still better, but we have basically two winning moves to find, um, and they both involve calculation. So the first one, the obvious one, is bishop takes knight. That one is pretty straightforward. Whenever you're looking at a position trying to find a move, you look at captures. So I'm going to suggest, if you're watching this, to go ahead and review that move. Pop that off of there. Bishop takes knight and calculate that out and see what happens. I didn't play that in the game because I wasn't sure about if there was a perpetual idea in the position or not. And there is the perpetual idea, but you need to see when you do your calculation, is it a perpetual check for black or is white just winning? Make sure you calculate it out and see. Go ahead and pause. Do whatever you got to do that. I'm going to slurp at some coffee. Okay, I'm going to go through that first. Bishop takes knight. So first off, does recaptures, does it work for black? It does not. So after recaptures, we actually just drop the rook back, and now rook c1 is good enough. Black can try and push his pawns, but white is getting there first. Black's actually just down, I think he's just down a tempo here. There's not really a great try, like rook a8. We just push, and then there's not really anything for black to do here. He's just losing. And we promote either pawn, and that's checkmate. So, can't recapture. Critical try is to push d2. And d2 and not the a pawn because we don't want this rook being able to come back to c1. So this is the critical try. And you had to calculate. This is hard to see, you know. It's like if you don't see the exact variation, it looks like black might be doing pretty good. But there is a line here that holds. All right. So if you haven't found it yet, go ahead and take another look. If you think you have, let's continue on. All right, so we play h7 check. And this is a thematic move in this position. And it should be any great surprise because this move complements the dark square bishop. So the king moves to the side. Doesn't go to g7 because bishop takes is check. So king h8. And now this next move is really important. It's important that we try and maintain the initiative for white. Play g7 check. King takes, bishop takes, and now the king doesn't recapture the bishop. The king goes to the side, and now white has nothing better than to promote. Can't stop the d-pawn. Black promotes, and now the question is there a perpetual here? And the answer is no, there is not. It doesn't matter what black does. White's just going to run all the way up the board. Last little trick, try and win the rook. Unfortunately, there's a counter check. And that's winning for white. In the game, I wasn't sure about the perpetual idea. It's really hard from this position to see if the perpetual is there or not. I mean, I could have thought longer about it, but I had another idea. You know how it is when you're figuring out your variations, you toggle back and forth. You'll go down the line and be like, unclear. You go back to the other variation, and if it's unclear, then you go back to the first variation, and you just you go back and forth until you try and figure it out. So the other idea, the second best move So first of all, bishop takes is the most accurate way to play this position. This is the most accurate way. Computer loves it. So the second move, if you haven't found the second move yet, so we've already ruled out rook c1, go ahead and pause and see if you can find the second move. And it's dealing with a theme. I'll let you think about that, stew on that, and then I'll explain. Okay, hopefully you found it. If you didn't, here we go. It's rook f4. And so this is the move I played in the game. I did find it, although I didn't find the complete idea of it. So first of all, the point is, if black takes, then we play the bishop to the dark square diagonal, and now h7 is just a killer move. Just to demonstrate, there's nowhere for the king to run that's safe. Last gasp, snuffed out. Okay. So can't take the rook with the pawn, and can't take the rook with the rook, because I wonder if we even promote first. We might actually, yeah, we might actually just take the rook, because he can't stop promotion. He's too slow. King has to come over to avoid being checkmated. Yeah, this is better. This is better. We just take the rook. Okay. So he can't take the rook with the pawn or with his own rook. Best try is what the computer played. Rook a8, attempting to push this a pawn. And now, so finding the next series of moves is all about that theme. The dark squares, and combining h7 with those dark squares to win the game. Either threaten checkmate or just promote the pawn and just win. So if you haven't found it yet, take a moment and find the next couple moves. Okay, so this was cool. I didn't find it in the game, which is a real shame because it's a beautiful idea. And that's why I'm making this video, really, because it's just a great idea. Everything's just working, and it doesn't matter what black does. He's just toast. So the next move is actually to combine the idea of this kingside play with the c pawn. So we don't play the rook move first. We play check first with the pawn. And then if the king steps up, our rook goes to f7 with check. King has to go to h8. And the rook's probably just better on f7, so king h8 right away. And now, if you haven't found the move yet, take a moment. We've been hitting on the theme, so it shouldn't be too hard. Definitely dark square theme here. Okay. The move is Rook D4. Beautiful, right? Pawn takes, bishop takes is checkmate. That's the point. Can't recapture. And then, of course, we're threatening to play the rook down to d8, and that will be winning. All right. Probably the best reply for black is to play the knight to e6. Stopping all these ideas. It looks like white might be running out of fuel. Maybe he just takes the d-pawn, and that doesn't look great, though. Takes the d-pawn, knight takes c7. We're still doing good as white. We're probably still winning, but there's better. There's way better. So this next move is pretty cool. If you haven't found it yet, take another moment. I'll sip up my coffee. All right, so the next move is bishop g5. Incredible. So obviously the point is knight takes, rook check, and we're winning that position. So if the king steps up, we just promote checkmate, and takes is no better because we do the same thing. Just gorgeous. So bishop g5, I mean, just beautiful, right? And this is winning. There is no try here. White's just straight up winning. And obviously the threat of bishop g5, not rook d8, the threat is actually bishop f6. One attempt is to play the rook over to stop that, stop the check. And then there's another great move here. Building on the theme, punching the theme, back rank, dark squares. You play rook down. And knight takes is no good because we just take. And there's not really anything to do here. Just as an example, that's checkmate. Rook takes is obviously no good as well because we promote again. If the king steps up, that's checkmate. So just really beautiful thematic chess. And that's the full idea of rook f4. I really wish I had found it in the game. I only saw some of the idea. What I saw was that maybe I could play rook to f7. What I ended up playing was rook to f1, which is still good. White's still winning here, but it's just not as pretty. Let's play through some of that. Yeah, it's still kind of interesting. And then I played king g2. So in a lot of variations, I was worried about the check on the back rank. It was unnecessary though, but you still have to find some pretty cool moves. So the main thing I was worried about, what did the computer play? Oh, the computer played back. So if we try and push pawns, I was worried about stuff like this. I wasn't sure about stuff like this, but it just doesn't work. For starters, we can take, and if knight takes, then, right, we take this way. And he has to step over, and we just take the knight, and this is completely winning. So it just doesn't work. After king g2, right. If we had played like this move, there's a pretty killer move of a2. Now rook a1, which is kind of what I was thinking. One of the reasons I played king g2, d2, and then probably king g2 is decent here. If we play the bishop back, just to show what I was kind of worried about. To get the pawn pushed. There's actually two winning moves. Domestic is just rook takes, which is not, intuitive. The knight plays back to stop promotion, and those two pawns are just like crazy strong. It's still, you got to play it out, So I didn't want to go into that. But there's another move here that's also winning, and you don't have to sack a rook. You just play this one, and then you take the queen, and this is winning. Still, you got to play it out. I played king g2 because I just wasn't sure about this stuff. It didn't look as clean. And, when you're in moments and you got to try and do a bunch of calculation and it's really easy to get it wrong, the practical approach is just to play safe and play stuff you understand. So here, the computer played knight d6 because a2 doesn't work. And I just attack the knight because if he pushes the pawn, we take the knight and then play rook d8, and that'll be winning. So And there's nowhere really great to put the knight now. And it was easy from here. So this was easier. This was way easier. Playing the computer, so we played all the way out. I recommend people playing stuff out unless it's just completely obvious. You know, you never know if your opponent will go wrong. You just really don't. Like, unless you see checkmate in like 2-3 moves, I say play it out. You might hate it. I mean, I think a lot of the reason people resign, like if they go down a piece, is it's just not any fun to try and play it. But if you want to get better at your chess, go ahead and play it out and make the other player show you why they're winning. Make them prove it. But I thought this was just a really great example of this theme. The dark squares along with the pawns right here in front of Black's king is just a great example of playing thematically and combining it with a passed pawn that's on the 7th. So hopefully you enjoyed that. I found it instructive, and yeah, have a good day.